I believe we got about 30 to 45 leads sent over to you per month. Just walk me through how many people we're converting from those leads.
In terms of getting an estimate or a walkthrough, I would say half. Consistently, it was about half, within 30 days. I would say that he has been able to provide enough leads to keep my sales staff about 40 to 70% busy consistently. In other words, 40 to 70% of the maximum amount of work they can do. So most of the time when you do contact, where they may need this service, but it's so far down on their priority list that they're not necessarily ready to buy. That wasn't the case with most of Spencer's leads. The people were ready to have a serious conversation. Abundant leads let people price their in the cleaning business would allow them to price their work at a point where they could be profitable.
All right, so we have Jeffrey here. He runs Enviromaster Northern Virginia. If you don't mind introducing yourself and your company, that'd be fantastic.
So hi, as Spencer said, my name is Jeffrey Bolden. I am the owner of Enviromaster of Northern Virginia. Enviromaster of Northern Virginia is a sanitization company. Sanitization is sort of the next step above janitorial. So janitors make stuff look clean and do cleaning up, but they don't necessarily know how to deal with bacterial load. So we're actually making sure that stuff is sanitary. So we come in is companies that want sanitary services, but wouldn't want to have a full-time sanitization staff. And that would be restaurants primarily, but you also see it in things like auto garages and, where, for example, there's dangerous chemicals on the floor on a regular basis that they don't necessarily know how to deal with in concrete. They know how to fix cars. They don't know how to fix their floors and get them to be safe for their workers. It also comes up in all sorts of other businesses, apartment complexes, et cetera, where they want a level of cleaning their janitorial staff can't provide or don't provide, like parking lots, for example. Malls, very common. Just about anybody who has a public bathroom has a sanitization problem. Thousands of people using a bathroom over the course of a week leaves behind an unbelievable amount of bacteria.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. If you don't mind touching on the results we've gotten you. I know we've been working together just under 3 months. So if you can elaborate on amount of leads we've gotten to you, quality leads, and then pipeline that we've built for the business.
Sure. Spencer and I engaged a few months back. I would say that he has been able to provide enough leads to keep my sales staff about 40 to 70% busy consistently. In other words, 40 to 70% of the maximum amount of work they can do. So leads come in, they start making calls, trying to book appointments. Those appointments turn into presentations, and then eventually, proposals, offers, discussions, etc. That's enough. I have currently 4 salespeople. During most of the time when he was engaged, I had 2 or 3, and so given the rate we were asking him to go at, he was ranging between 40 to 70% consumption of initial pipeline. Initial pipeline in this job is usually ranges from about 80 to 125 cold contacts to get a job. About that number would usually result in about 20 presentations. His leads were probably 30 to 50% presentation conversion. So that is to say, he was saving our people, so they were calling to get presentation appointments, and and that's saving 2 to 3 sort of random door pulls and conversations. But what's really valuable is the presentation conversion rate to a serious proposal was considerably higher, probably 2 to 3 times as likely. So the people we were talking to frequently were interested in janitorial service, but were serious a huge percentage of the time. They weren't casual. I mean, most of the time when you do contact, where they may need this service, but it's so far down on their priority list that they're not necessarily ready to buy. That wasn't the case with most of Spencer's leads. The people were ready to have a serious conversation. They maybe weren't necessarily willing to pay for what they wanted, but they at least wanted to hear what they cost. So we were far further down the line, and on especially presentations turning into proposals percentage, they were really good.
Diving into a little bit more deeper, I believe we got about 30 to 45 around that range leads sent over to you per month. Just walk me through in terms of how many people we're converting from those leads each month into at least talking to them, getting an estimate, or a walkthrough?
Oh, in terms of getting an estimate or a walkthrough, I would say half.
Okay.
Consistently, it was about half, within 30 days. Getting to a decision maker or one or the person who's collecting information for a decision maker, doing a walkthrough, being able to take measurements and being able to look at parameters of the deal. Yeah, 50%.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's just really as many times as you nurture. But the nice thing about it too is that they already explained or they already showed interest. So recycling them, nurturing the interested leads definitely can lead to a conversion later down the road, especially if they have a contract ending or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah, it was I mean, it was a decent percentage. I mean, some of them I was very disappointed where it was accidental, but,
yeah,
even those I did follow-up 'cause, the number of, presentations conversion to presentations, yeah, 50% easy. And then, sales conversion was somewhat higher, than we would
good.
normally get from a presentation, because, again, they're reaching out. It's
Yeah.
not being times people in our typical sales cycle, we're pushing, we're trying to get them. They have had something that has caused them to reach out, and say, okay, I want to have this meeting, which is different than a charismatic salesperson met with them and sort of pressured them for the next
Mhm.
meeting and the next meeting. Next meeting. We don't do a hard sell, but it's a medium sell because again, like our typical business is a restaurant. Nobody goes into the restaurant business because they want to deal with problems in sanitization and cleaning. They want to prepare food. It's just, look, if people are eating in your establishment, that you're going to the bathroom more frequently, and if you're preparing food in that same establishment, you really need
Yeah.
to make sure that you're getting your sanitary standards up. So yeah. So they were having something that causes them to reach out, and that's very good.
Yeah. Oh, very good. I appreciate that. And then if you could touch briefly on like the impact, like how has this propelled your business? You can take it in any each way, but impact wise to you, your sales team, you can touch on that. That'd be great.
I mean, it's an interesting question. We haven't had enough time to sort of structure around the quality, the number of proposals, et cetera, et cetera. So there was let's say the fall off, the sticker shock. In other words, we didn't have a sales process in place that necessarily structured around it.
Mhm.
The impact was, like I said, it took about half the salespeople's time dealing with these leads. So, from a perspective of hitting our other sales process, it pulled attention away. On the other hand, at the end of the day, the whole point of the sales process is to get sales.
Uh-huh.
So I was frequently quite happy with the deals they were working on that I was getting referred to from your site and your people. But I would say if we were in like a 2-year engagement or something like that, I probably would want to either restructure or have specialized people absorbing it. And, we were giving you the number. I think, as time went on, it got faster and faster and faster and faster. So I suspect that you could have scaled up to almost any number of leads in 6 months, a year. That we had needed. The first month was slower than we wanted, but then quickly it got to be a little heavier. And if I was structuring around it, I think you could have gone faster because I did notice there's no question an increasing pace.
Mhm. Yeah. You have to build it out. It doesn't just come and or it doesn't you don't get results in the first day. Like we have to build the cool email system, we have to build the domain, scrape the leads in your area. But yes, that's exactly correct. It takes about 12, 14 days to get your first batch of leads. And then it increasingly comes in batches at a little bit higher pace. But going to like the last final words, if you don't mind just touching on any final thoughts, any parting ways. If someone was watching this, would you recommend it for any cleaning company that might be interested in getting help with the lead generation side and building their top of funnel?
In terms of a cleaning company, the main thing would be you'd have to be a cleaning company that is at our price point or higher. So in other words, you need to be looking at clients that are say $7,000 a year in 7,000 in annual revenue or more for this kind of program to make sense. So a huge percentage of the cleaning companies are domestic, residential cleaning, and they're looking for more like 2,000. There, I don't think it would make a hell of a lot of sense, but commercial cleaning or, very large residences or someone who's looking 4 or 5 days a week residential, yeah, I think that, this would make a lot of sense for any of those.
I think the thing that can be taken away from this is that a lot of companies maybe they're smaller and they're charging low prices to be competitive against the big players in the industry, and they're charging like that. But if they're able to get a consistent lead flow that's coming in every week, every month. They're able to predict it because they're using a service like ours, or they're using any other type of advertising or marketing that's getting a good ROI. They could charge more, and they can charge more premium prices. So either if they're doing it already, or if they are interested in something like this, like it probably makes sense to look at making your service a little bit more valuable in terms of price, but also pitching it like as a more valuable service, because you are getting that lead flow and you can kind of experiment on what you're charging and what you're providing, so that you can kind of control and not have to be so
Right,
competitive at
exactly.
pricing.
It's very easy to sell work not at a loss.
Correct.
But it's a wonderful way to go bankrupt. So yeah, I mean there's just no two ways about it. You're right. Abundant leads let people price their in the cleaning business would allow them to price their work at a point where they could be profitable. And they're getting commercial clients they want.
I appreciate it. I think we'll close out here. This has been an insightful conversation. I feel like anyone watching this that wants to charge more prices or be a little bit more specialized, like definitely you're the right person to speak with, or at least hear from. But I'm glad that we've been doing a good job and getting good results for your business and helping you drive forward. So we'll stop here. Thank you.